It's said that the first week in an air academy is the time for new students to adjust, but it's also when professors learn the students' abilities and scout them. Rudd has done enough to catch their attention and earn a recommendation, so he wants to spend the rest of this time preparing himself for the sparring class, but he wonders why they're both naturally grouping themselves with him. Meanwhile, some students appear in front of them and call their attention. Henneth gets angry and asks them to move out of the way, while the boy exclaims he doesn't have anything against her and also enjoyed her speech earlier. She starts shouting at them, but Rudd asks her to move aside and asks them what they want. The boy says he has a problem with them because they create scenes in the class to get attention. They all make fun of and laugh at them, saying how they got admitted to the academy. Rudd remembers he had beaten them all in his previous life because he was short-temper Rudd, but this time he will act maturely and not get freaked out. He exclaims that they are enough to fight them with one weapon, even if they use 500. The boy becomes furious about this and tries to punch Rudd, but he easily dodges him. The boy can't balance himself, falls on the ground and tries to take out his sword. Henneth shouts at him and says that using weapons outside of sparring is prohibited, but he doesn't listen to her. He tries to attack Rudd with his sword while he thinks he can test this body and the move he learned from Balak in his previous life. He uses the skill of Stero's style, bare-handed parrying, dodges him with his bare hand, and punches him back. The boy badly falls on the ground, and Rudd asks him to consider it a lesson for the next time. Balak is shocked to see his technique because it belonged to his family. Meanwhile, a professor appears there and asks about what is happening. One of Wilhelm's friends claims that Rudd hit him first, but Henneth and Balak defend him, saying that he attacked him first and just responded to his attack. The instructor is surprised at how he was able to disarm him bare-handed, because a first-year student can't do this without injuries. She asks Wilhelm's friends to take him to the clinic and calls Rudd to come to his office after classes when all of them leave. Henneth is curious, so he asks Balak how he managed to use this technique without any weapons. Balak reveals that the adults in his family can do it, but he can't yet. Henneth wonders if Balak might be his lost brother, but Rudd knows the truth. He can't tell them that he learned this in his previous life, so he brags that he's just a natural genius. Henneth, however, senses that Balak is hiding something and presses him to spill the beans, but Balak insists that they shouldn't dig into each other's secrets. After class, he heads to the instructor's office and apologizes for causing a scene. He tells her that Wilhelm insulted his friends and he didn't realize it, which led to the fight. The instructor is touched by his words and sees him as a good guy who stands up for his friends. She lets him off the hook with a smile and promises to handle Wilhelm during training. Meanwhile, Daniel enters her office because today's meeting for the freshman class teachers is in her office. He teases her for being stubborn and not coming to the meeting place. Shortly after, Class D's homeroom teacher, Arthur Winston, and Class C's homeroom teacher, Damien Grace, join the meeting. Daniel notes that this year's new students are more advanced than last year's, and he expects a high graduation rate. Arthur asks if there are any students they should keep an eye on, and Damien replies that they are all quite exceptional. Claire chimes in, mentioning the idiot in Class B, Wilhelm, whose written exam was awful, but his practical skills were outstanding. She adds that Wilhelm comes from the famous unarmed muscle enthusiast Stero's family, and Daniel seems intrigued. Daniel reveals that there are two standout prospects in his class, Harpolia's second daughter, Henneth, and a student named Rudd Donatos. They are all surprised when they see Rod's profile, showing he barely passed both the written and practical exams, lost his family, and worked as a mercenary. However, Daniel insists that Rudd is the strongest among the first years. Claire also praises Rudd, the one who subdued Wilhelm without weapons. She believes she should be his teacher since she specializes in unarmed combat. However, Daniel thinks Rudd's true talent lies in weaponry, like the spear and the sword. The meeting continues as they discuss their students' potential and future prospects. They both start fighting each other, each wanting to keep Rudd as his student. Arthur interrupts them, saying this is not how a teacher should behave. He reminds them there's still a week until the sparring class, so they should calm down. He also points out that the student has the right to choose their professor. They are shocked when Claire tells them that Rudd belongs to Disol. 10 years ago, the village disappeared after the Thousand Form incident. It was a tragedy that destroyed half of the Caliban kingdom to the south. This event marked the beginning of their national decline, eventually vanishing from the maps. A few years later, a single dragon destroyed an entire country. Daniel reveals that his master was the one who killed 1,000 dragons. But they didn't know there was a survivor of the incident. They wonder if he has come to the academy to train for revenge on dragons. Meanwhile, Arthur reveals that there is another student in Class D, another genius with monstrous talent. Before we continue, let's take a moment to shout out Rafat5180 who commented, "If you could reincarnate, what would your profession be? Probably a monster disassembly," on our Isekai'd 101 times video. Thanks for commenting. 2 days later, during the combined physical training class, Rudd is exercising. He thinks there are 3 days left until the sparring lecture. Now, he's finally getting used to the breathing technique and postures he used in his past life to some extent. Henneth appears and shouts at them, surprised they can work out for 3 hours straight without resting. Balak suggests she should exercise with them, thinking all the women in this academy look like they've been starved for weeks. After some time, Henneth and Rudd go to a cafe to buy some drinks. There, he sees a girl named Leon. Rudd remembers her from his past life. She used to bully him, saying she considered him more vital than his brother, but that he was weaker than him. She is a swordsman with the talent of the Devil Sword Saint, a knight as strong as his brother and one of the strongest dragon slayers. Suddenly he remembers he hates her, so he yells at her and asks her to step aside, which makes her angry. She tries to attack him, but Rudd easily blocks her attack. She attempts to kick him again, but he once again blocks her attack. She thought he was just an idiot, but he dodged her attacks twice and asked her why she was trying to pick a fight with him. Rudd exclaims that she was the one who blocked their way first. He passes her, and Leon asks his name, saying she will surely remember him. She leaves them there, and Rudd thinks he almost broke his wrist when he tried to test her strength. She's got crazy physical power. Henneth takes him to the infirmary and wraps his wrist up. After a while, Claire rushes over and asks Rudd what happened. He says it was just an accident, but Henneth spills the beans. She says Rudd got beaten by a girl named Leonka. Rudd chimes in, saying it wasn't a beatdown, just a minor squabble. They're both surprised to hear about Leon, and Claire is dead set on giving her a lesson. But Daniel steps in and says no way. He warns Claire that if she can't control her temper, it'll cause trouble. Arthur, who's in charge of Class D, steps up and says he'll handle it smartly. Leon has taken on many students before, so they need to be careful. First, they think about complaining to Leon's guardian, the leader of the Dragon Annihilation troops. He asks Arthur to talk to her properly. 3 days later, all the students gather at the training ground for a combined sparring lecture. In this lecture, they'll each get a number and choose their opponent for a match. No one can pick the same opponent twice, so there will only be 2 matches for each student. All the professors watch from the second floor as the students compete. They start with Helion McDowell, who comes forward to choose his opponent. His opponent is Henneth. Rudd thinks she's just a wizard who's not great at magic, but she chooses a sword fight as her match. With pride, she hurls fireballs at her opponent, but they're not fast enough. Helion dodges with ease. He tries to close in before she can cast another spell, but Henneth speeds up and keeps him at bay. He struggles to dodge her attacks, and before he knows it, she's got her dagger at his neck. He admits his defeat, and Henneth is declared the winner. She's hoping for some appreciation from Miss Liana. Meanwhile, Rudd is thinking that her attacks were really impressive. He realizes it could have been dangerous if his opponent had noticed a little earlier. He thinks Henneth is always like that, with her fancy way of fighting and great battle sense. Her agility is top-notch, and her use of magic is just perfect. Instructor Arthur also gives Henneth some praise, saying it's pretty rare to see a wizard fighting like this. Claire steps in and announces the next student to come out and choose their opponent. This time, Wilhelm appears and calls Rudd to come forward. He promises not to repeat his past mistake. As they watch, they feel a bit embarrassed by Wilhelm's confidence and high spirit. Rudd, however, steps out and says he'll fulfill Wilhelm's wish. He defeats Wilhelm so severely that Wilhelm becomes unconscious, and some students have to take him to the infirmary. Rudd then exclaims that he wants to spar with another student. This time he chooses Balak Steros. Balak hesitates at first, saying that Steros fighters don't usually fight with their friends, but Rudd taunts him, calling him a coward. Rudd thinks Balak must have been really powerful in his past life, like the earth shaking with each step and mountains falling with every punch. Balak finally agrees to fight him, recalling a time in their past when Balak had to calm him down on someone else's request. But Balak used harsh words against his brother and threatened to kill him if he interfered in their matter. Now they're having a spar again, but this time Balak is determined not to repeat the past. He steps forward to attack Rudd, but Rudd doesn't just dodge his attack, he punches Balak's neck too. Balak is a bit frustrated because he's landed several hits on Rudd, but there are hardly any scratches. The Steros are a family of martial artists from the northern area, and each one of them is a muscle enthusiast. Their muscles, improved over generations, have fused with mana to create armour thicker and sturdier than iron. It can be said that Balak's body has become the strongest shield with bulging muscles. Regular attacks won't work on him. This time, Rudd takes out his sword to attack Balak. Balak can't dodge the attack and falls to the ground. The teachers are shocked by their fight, wondering if it's a battle between students. They didn't use any magic, but their abilities were as great as the current Dragon Slayers. What will happen next? Find out next time by staying tuned for our future recaps. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great recaps.